Now, shares of Research in Motion have lost half their value in the last year, and 8 analysts have cut their ratings of the BlackBerry maker's stock in the past week. But our next guest says it may be time to buy. Macquarie Group's Smithen has just rated RIM Outperform and set a 12-month price target of $40. He joins us now from Dallas. So, Kevin, RIM, to everybody else, seems to be in a downward spiral. Why are you so bullish on this?
Well, we've seen a total catharsis of sentiment here on the stock. As late as 2 months ago, you've had over 60 analysts covering the stock, and the vast bulk of them had buy ratings and targets in the 70s and 80s. In the last month, you've seen the average price target come down to the mid-30s, and all of a sudden a sell rating. You've seen what's happened to the share price of the stock, and we feel that sentiment has never been worse on the name. Where we differ from consensus, we also follow the carrier and service providers in the U.S. and have colleagues that follow them around the world. And we feel that the international markets that RIM is very strong in, its international business ex-Canada, we estimate grew 68% Q1 year over year, and that business remains very healthy. There are a number of structural reasons why the international markets are very different. Your previous guest mentioned...
Kevin, if users are choosing Android and iPhone over BlackBerry in the U.S., wouldn't they make the same choices abroad?
Well, the international markets are very different. For one, as your previous guest just mentioned, the Chinese market and most of the Asian and European and Latin American markets are predominantly prepaid. So the upgrade in what we call service ARPU that Verizon and AT&T and others are experiencing with what I call the smartphone stampede here in the U.S., the carriers internationally are unable to monetize the data plans the same way that they are in the U.S. In the U.S., an iPhone customer or an Android customer give roughly an 80% revenue lift to the carriers at Verizon or AT&T. The incremental bump from those products in emerging markets or in Europe is significantly less due to the prepaid nature of those products, the fact that they have lower ARPU in those markets, and more competition. So we think there's structural differences in those markets. Another issue is that foreign carriers do not have the spectrum or network capacity that we do in the U.S. Verizon and Metro PCS have already launched LTE. AT&T will launch that next year. For the first time in history, the U.S. is at the forefront of wireless technology. Without the LTE networks, the user experience on an Android device and on a iPhone device is significantly worse than it is in the U.S. The next point,
Kevin, all of that said, RIM stock is so cheap right now. It's been suggested that it's a takeover target. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, our investment case is not centered around M&A or a takeout of the company. We do think that we're frankly perplexed at the valuation that the company is trading at. The company is at a 2.5 times enterprise value to EBITDA on what we consider to be trough year earnings, and that is a multiple that's typically reserved for highly leveraged cyclical commodity companies like DRAM or hard disk drives at the trough of the cycle. RIM have significant intellectual property. The company, we estimate, will generate at least $1.5 billion in free cash flow this year, has almost $3 billion of cash in their balance sheet, is about to buy back as much as 7 or 8% of the free float over the next several months in a share repurchase plan. We don't think RIM disappears. They've got a very strong franchise internationally, and they've got a very strong install base with over 24 million enterprise customers globally that are paying them $4 plus a month in revenue, and that's an annuity business that will not go away anytime soon. So we think the stock...
Kevin, you're talking about the positives. Cory Johnson, our editor-at-large, has been doing stories all week about the positives and the negatives. I want to bring him in now. Cory, do you think that Macquarie is crazy for recommending to buy RIM right now?
Yeah, usually when we have guests on this show, we don't say, what are you, high? Because we don't like to do that. But I've got to wonder, when you look at this stock, I mean, people don't go from VHS to, from CDs back to VHS. I mean, it seems that these guys are caught in a product they used to do very well, and they don't do that anymore. Someone else does that better. Do you really think people are going to migrate in the future such that they should have a valuation at 2 times book? Yes, they're going to throw off some cash this year, but come on.
Well, we're not optimistic about their hopes for the U.S. consumer business. We think that's relatively a lost cause. We actually value in our sum of the parts the U.S. device business at about $1 per share and the Playbook tablet business at a little bit more than that. So we're ascribing almost zero value to those businesses. We're not super optimistic that the BlackBerry 7 operating system or the QNX operating system products that are going to be launched in the late August, September timeframe, and QNX in the Q1 2012, calendar Q1 2012 timeframe are going to be very successful in the United States. What we are saying, though, is that the user experience.
What's going to make these guys come back? Like, what's the one thing that's going to make these guys come back?
They have tremendous BlackBerry BBM messenger momentum in markets like Indonesia, Thailand. We're talking about triple-digit growth there and over 50% market share. iPhone has been available in these markets for over a year and has not had any traction. It's a $650 device versus RIM charging $200 to $250, so it's much cheaper for consumers in those markets. But the cultural phenomenon of BBM is much more successful in Europe and in Asia and in Latin America. And we think it's actually the product of choice, and
BBM
is
something that Kevin, BBM is something that we don't talk enough about. But RIM did close at $28.40 today. You have a $40 price target. We will be watching how that stock moves. Thanks so much for joining us.